On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, things ain't going so hot for the Raptors at the moment at 13-14 ahead of tonight's game against the Kings. O.G. Anunoby's out, Otto Porter Jr. and Precious Achiuwa are out to the new year at least. So we gotta go back to a simpler time. On today's show, Katie Heindl joins me as we look back at the summer and what our predictions would have been for various members of the Raptors and whether what they've done so far this year would have made us happy back in the summer. That's all coming up on today's episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1301 of Locked On Raptors for Wednesday, December the 14th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Raptors now for 9 seasons on various platforms. You can find all of my work over on Twitter at WoodleySean, so go follow there. You can also follow the show at Locked On Raptors, and you can subscribe to, follow, rate, and review the podcast for free on your favorite podcast apps, Apple, Spotify, Google Play, all the whole 9 yards are over there. Also, YouTube. Hit the big red subscribe button. Support the show there as we push towards 3,000 subs. Thanks to everyone who's done it. Thanks to those who plan to do so in advance. And if you haven't yet, what the hell, man? This is a free podcast. We don't ask much. All right. On today's show, we continue Despair Week here on the podcast as the Raptors have a very unfortunate couple days off on the heels of 2 losses to the Magic. And we are now, about at the time of recording, 9 hours away from the Raptors finally playing another game against the Kings, like the Beam, etc. Things could get weird if they lose tonight as well, I would guess. Things have already gotten weird this week. People are angsty. People want answers. People want blood. We're not really going to go that route on today's show, I don't think. We're going to try to go for a little bit more of an optimistic tone, and we are going to do that with our pal Katie Heindl from Dime Basketball Feelings. Katie, how the hell are you?
I'm good, man, but I have to say, I was like, man, your brain is broken, because the first thing I thought of this morning, like as I was waking up, was I hope someone told whoever does the lights at the CN Tower on game days not to light it purple, because if they lose to the Kings, then the Kings social media can just be like, they've lit the beam for us in Toronto.
They built a beam.
They built a beam and they lit it.
I mean, that would be kind of fun, honestly.
I would love it.
The beam should take over the world. Everyone, the Kings are North America's team. How about that? If you're a disenchanted Raptors fan right now, hop on the Kings bandwagon. Kevin Huerter's cool. Davion Mitchell plays defense the way you wish any Raptors guard would. It's wonderful. All right. Katie, we had a little chat earlier this week. So a little peek behind the curtain as to the process behind concocting this here episode. I got my wedding pictures back from the end of July just this week. It was very, very exciting, and I sent you a couple that you were involved in because you were, of course, there. There is a great Locked On Raptors fam photo with myself, you and Vivek, and your significant others. It's lovely. So when I sent you those pictures, you instantly went into, man, I wish it was summer. And contrary to what my sort of take has typically been on summer, I've been summer pilled, Katie. Those wedding pictures made me feel good. The weather outside is miserable. I don't like it very much. I can't go skiing yet because there's not snow and it's not cold enough. And so I'm just kind of sitting here in this seasonally affected state, wishing it were the summer. And that also applies to the Toronto Raptors, who I think in the summer were full of excitement and joy and Rico Hines footage. Everyone was all on the wagon, and it seems as though the wagon's been a little bit rickety over the last couple weeks here. So, Katie, the concept for today's show, we're going to go back and look at our off-season prognostications for a few different members of the Raptors, what our feelings were back in August, July, other summer months. Are there other summer months? I guess those are the 2 main ones. Yeah. Either way, we're going to go back, look at what we thought about various guys, and we're going to ask the question, if I'd told you in the summer that X player was going to do whatever X player has done so far, would it be happy or sad? It's a loose concept, but it'll work. Katie, are you ready to dive on in?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. All right. Let's start with Pascal Siakam, shall we? Who, of course, in the summer, everyone knew it was his first actual summer of working out for a very long time with the COVID and the injuries and the shoulder rehab and all this stuff. It was, the first time he's gotten to go back into the lab, as it were, in quite some time. And I think there was optimism about Pascal coming into the year. I think there was a lot of sort of suggestions that he was going to have a career season, both internally and externally. And that has certainly come to fruition. 25 a game, nearly 9 boards, 7 assists. He's got a pretty efficient, near 58% true shooting. He has been the best player on the Raptors by a pretty significant margin. Even with missing some time, the Raptors outscore the other team by a whole lot when he's on the floor. They get waxed when he's off the floor. He's doing superstar stuff. Katie, if I told you in the summer that Pascal Siakam was going to play like he has so far this year, would you have been happy or sad? What would your reaction have been?
Imagine I said sad. No,
yeah,
I would be
not good enough. Meh.
I think he has probably I mean, our expectations when you and I ever talked about it were pretty loose. It was just like, I think he's probably going to have his best season yet in his career, which he is and has been. So I guess we technically called it, but I wouldn't give myself credit rather for any of the specifics. But man, yeah, I was stoked about it, and I still am.
Yeah, I mean, this one I think is the easiest one to dig into. It's pretty awesome that Siakam has become a top 10 player in the NBA pretty much without question or doubt. He is incredible. He's walking into his numbers every night. The playmaking has been insane. When he's on the floor, the Raptors' half-court offense doesn't actively suck. He is doing a lot of really great things to help prop up this team, and it was clearly very felt when he wasn't in the lineup and the way things kind of deteriorated when he wasn't there. They won games while he was out, but it wasn't pretty. They had to kind of scrape by and do it ugly. And yeah, I think he's the easy one. You're thrilled with what Pascal Siakam has done. And if you are, whatever it might be, concerned, questioning the vision, looking at a partial sort of rejiggering of the roster, whatever, I think you can feel at least pretty good that the big picture question, do the Raptors have a superstar, is answered. They do. That is a really great place to start from. And no matter your opinions on the rest of the guys we're going to talk about today, I think the fact that Pascal is as good as he is makes it so none of this is as bad as it feels right now. They're only 13 and 14. They're like 2 games out of the 2 seed. So it's not bad anyway, really, in the grand scheme to begin with. But if you are the type of person who's questioning the validity of this team and the viability going forward, knowing that Pascal is there, it's pretty darn comforting and should be comforting to you. Katie, anything else to add on Pascal before we move to other guys who may have disappointed a little bit more?
I think the only thing that I maybe we didn't, because we're talking about summer predictions. I perhaps did not think he would be getting the kind of league-wide credit and recognition that he is, just because that's kind of something that's historically been lacking. Yeah. For Raptors players. So that's been a nice surprise.
Yeah, I'd be really fascinated to see how he does in all-star voting. I would imagine he's going to make the team because he's one of the 10 best players alive right now. But, he's been voted a starter before. I wonder if the same sort of fervor will be behind him, even if the team is not exactly performing super well. It should be. He's awesome. He should be an Eastern Conference starter. I don't think there's really any debate about that. Let's continue on here, Katie. Quickly go to another guy who's been very impressive. Have I asked you in the summer, do you think O.G. Anunoby is going to have a good season? What do you think O.G. is going to do? If I had told you he was going to average 19 to go along with 6 boards, 2 assists, a league-leading 2.4 steals a game, and until just this week was going to remain healthy, you would have been pretty stoked, huh?
I would have been. And again, not the specifics, but the drama I was banging on nonstop was the need for O.G. Anunoby to have a not disrupted season, to finally get this sort of runway to do the things that he's doing, that his teammates got to do, in seasons prior, and O.G. never did, but that I really knew was in there, deep down. So I also think I said I wanted to see a reemergence of the sneaky, stealthy O.G., and we have seen it. In terms of forced turnovers and steals and everything, and just being a defensive menace. So pretty good. I'd say 2 for 2 Nostradamus, Katie. I'm Nostradamus, Katie.
Yeah. I'll also like take the W on this one as well. If you think back to our preseason over under spectacular with Vivek Jacob and Sahal Abdi, I went full in on an OG breakout when it came to my picks. I picked the over on his points. I picked him to lead the team in steals. I picked him to lead the team in dunks, all of which are happening right now. And I think, yeah, had you told me he was going to do this, I don't think I would have been shocked because I did feel like some sort of breakout was coming. I don't think I saw it to this extent. I don't think I saw him like legitimately being a very viable defensive player of the year candidate that is getting national attention for that very thing. So it's been a little bit even more impressive than I expected, and I was pretty high on OG's stock coming into the year. So again, we're on a positive note to begin. Pascal and OG, the two best players on the team right now, have surpassed expectations. That's a pretty good thing to hang your hat on if you are a despair-ridden Raptors fan right now. There's, other stuff we're going to get to in a sec here that's maybe not so rosy, but big picture, the guys who really matter the most have been fantastic, and that is very, very good. We're going to come back on the other side, Katie, get into Scottie Barnes, who I think is a little bit more of an interesting conundrum with this one, and Fred VanVleet. I want to talk about Nick Nurse and sort of the way the team has been coached as well, because everyone wants to talk about Nick. I had a stroke right there. Everyone wants to talk about Nick Nurse right now. We'll get to that in just 1 second. Before we do that, however, got to tell you about our dear friends over at Turo, a brand new sponsor with us. Turo is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the US, UK, Canada, and coming soon to Australia as well. In the summer, I went on my honeymoon with my lovely wife, and we rented a car, and it was the most expensive thing we paid for an entire honeymoon. It was ridiculous just to drive around a little bit in the car and have like the freedom to do so. It cost us so much money. Literally all of our credit card points we had spent years accruing for our honeymoon went to the car. Turo is not like that. It's far more affordable, and you get to pick and choose the car you want. You're not just going to be saddled with whatever the rental agency gives you. Instead, you can get a booking for an SUV or a minivan if you're going on a family road trip. You can get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, holiday, honeymoon perhaps. Or you can find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just got to get from A to B. You can test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on as well to see how it might fit into your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. That is wonderful service. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. That's Turo.com. And today's show is also brought to you by our dear pals over at Built Bar, who they've been around on this podcast for a very long time. And you know, they're delicious. They're healthy. They make it seem like you're being indulgent when in fact you're having something that's good for you, that's going to give you fuel, protein, all the good stuff to get through your day while also tasting absolutely delicious. And you got to try out their reimagined flavors. They got the cookie dough topper, the coconut brownie bar, and the coconut brownie topper, among a whole bunch of other wonderful things. It's also the holidays, and they're experimenting with new peppermint flavored things such as their granola. They got white chocolate peppermint granola, that is. It's a great take on the granola bar. It's more filling and still insanely tasty as well. They got candy cane brownie. They've got Built Puffs as well, which are marshmallowy delights. They got a whole host of things for you to check out. Maybe you have someone who works out in your life and they want to be fueled through their days. Get them a box of Built Bars, put them in their stocking or something like that. It's a wonderful gift idea ahead of the holidays as well. Built, you gotta try this. Get 15% off your order right now by using the code LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. That's the code LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. Go get yourself some Built Bars. All right, we continue our look back at the wonderful time that was the summer. Optimism abound, Katie. Everyone feeling good about the team and its direction before their 13-14 disjointed start. Let's take a look at Fred VanVleet, shall we? This is probably the one where things have gone the most awry, I would say. In the offseason, I think there was at least for me, optimism that he was going to kind of assume a new role, which I do think for the most part has happened. I thought in that new role, kind of playing off of the creation of the Raptors' big wings, he was going to be like a 44% three-point shooter because of the quality and openness of the catch-and-shoot looks I figured he was going to get. I figured, hey, he's going to remain an excellent defender. He's probably going to have more energy for defense when he's not running every single possession. Not the case so far, Katie. It's been a rough year for Fred. He's shooting 36% overall. He's shooting 32.6% from three. The defense, the point of attack defense has really slipped. If I told you in the summer, Katie, that Fred VanVleet was going to be averaging 17 to go along with 6.4 assists, 3.5 boards, a steal, 1.7 steals, and all of those horrible shooting splits I just ran down, what would you have said?
I would have said, like, what's wrong with him?
Yeah.
And I think what's has been wrong with him is pretty clear. Like, they're pretty clear things to point to. I said this on Freddie Rivas's Confederacy of Dunks podcast yesterday, but I don't think this is some like existential problem for Fred VanVleet. I think he was very ill.
Was.
Yeah. Like very, very ill twice, it seems like. And maybe, that takes a little longer to come back from because your conditioning is thrown off. I'm like, should I give myself credit for being this like smart? But I probably wouldn't be. But I think now there's something to be said for the jockeying. And we're going to talk about this later with Nick Nurse. And I think this kind of falls on him. But the different shifts in roles for the team and the sort of jockeying for positions and who is supposed to be where when. And I think Fred has kind of taken that in stride pretty admirably. But it's obviously thrown things off for him, in a sense, which I guess that is a little bit of a surprise, just because of the kind of player leader we've seen him be for the team in the past, and like someone who seems, fairly unflappable, able to really just like roll with the punches, fold like the bad things as well as the good things in and adjust his game from there accordingly. And for whatever reason, maybe he hasn't been as quick to do that this season, though. I don't think it's some like existential, like, well, this is it for Fred situation.
Yeah. I do feel like there is a very quick conclusion being jumped to by a lot of folks right now, and like suggesting that Fred is like Isaiah Thomas, like where he just kind of like lost it immediately.
Right.
I don't think that's what's happening here. I think you're right. He's been sick. The minutes he played last season, maybe that's bleeding into this year. Certainly, he played a ton of minutes. He was broken down at the back part of last season, but you also get a whole off season to recoup and recover and, recondition and all that stuff. So I don't know how much stock I even put into what happened last year. I guess it's all cumulative and it all matters, but I do feel like there's a bounce back of some kind here coming for Fred at some point. You just don't forget how to be a 40% three-point shooter. You just don't forget how to do those things. And while maybe there's a little bit less athleticism popping off the screen, maybe he's not the guy who's going to get downhill and get to the rim a bunch of times. It's never really been his game anyway. He's always just been a fantastic shooter, and that's been the thing that's made him a viable 5'11" dude playing high-level NBA minutes. The shot, I feel like, has to come back at some point. Maybe I'm, missing some signs that it's gone and will never come back the way it's been in the past. But the ease of his looks seems anecdotally, there's easier looks coming his way. Pascal is creating great looks for everybody right now. And it's bizarre that the three guys that he kind of passes to the most, O.G., Fred, and Trent, are having such difficult seasons from outside. But it has to be, to me, like a weird small sample randomness that's going to course correct as the Raptors hopefully play a little bit more time with their main guys, get some more, coalescing going on. And you can't wait for that all season long. At some point, you have to just sort of look at what's happened and say, hey, this is just the reality now. But I don't think we're at that point yet. What's your, the thing that's difficult with this is Fred is at an important juncture in his contract and his career with the Raptors, right? Like, this season is about the Raptors figuring out, okay, who are the guys that we're going to go to war with in the Pascal peak, Scottie Barnes, rising era. And Fred, I think, is very much a question as to whether that's going to be a thing or not. I still think if you have Fred VanVleet as your fourth best player, you're in a pretty good spot. But have you wavered or felt any sort of uncertainty about the viability of Fred VanVleet with the Raptors as sort of like a long-term member of this core based on this start so far this year?
No, because I'm fairly pragmatic when it comes to basketball. And also because I think you can't really discount, and I know people hate this, but you can't really discount institutional knowledge in an athlete. And I think, you do have that in Pascal and O.G, but you have that much differently in Fred. Like sometimes, okay, the numbers suck right now. They're very bleak. However, the organization of the team, like we've talked about this before, like I really do think there's not enough knowledge through like the growing roster for things to not look super scattershot and a little bit just like out of hand if you don't have Fred out there. The argument would be, well, if you just got another pretty well storied point guard in exchange, would that solve the problem? But I also think no, because also like those aren't really players that are always like up for grabs. You know what I mean? Teams hang on to those guys for a reason, because they're kind of like the steering mechanism for the team. I was going pretty analogy heavy, but what can you do?
Fred for Kyle, fire up the trade machine. Let's
sure,
get his institutional knowledge back.
No, I really do think some of this is probably just difficulty in yielding. Like we think, okay, like these guys are the longest tenured players on the team, Fred, Pascal, O.G. They wouldn't really get like flustered, or they wouldn't really need to adjust as like new guys come in and kind of like vie and opt for their minutes and their looks. But that does factor into it, especially as you mentioned, like there's contract questions, right?
Yep.
In the works for like not just Fred, but for like a lot of the guys that you were like, this is who we're building the team around. So that's hanging over, like that's like a specter hanging over the room too. And I think that just like compounds and adds pressure. So when you're already feeling bad because like Fred's aware of the numbers he's putting up. He's like probably one of the most self-aware guys in the NBA, I would say, not just on the Raptors. So when you have this other factor, like other stressful factor factoring in and like compounding of that stress, sometimes that just makes things worse.
Yeah, there's a human element to sports that never gets talked about, which probably should on account of all of the players are humans. And
I would also just say like the trust, obviously, that Masai and Nick Nurse and like the front office have in someone like Fred, and have sort of said to him, like, I'm sure like there's so many, there's the thing to always remember, like a huge grain of salt. There are so many conversations and things going on in the background you do not know about.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, maybe there isn't any worry there because maybe he's had conversations with them through his agent, and that they've all like sat down and been like, okay, like slumps are going to happen, but we're with you. We don't know. So I think it's just like you can save yourself a lot of like mental gymnastics if you just take a breather every now and then and realize that.
Yeah, I feel like admitting that we don't know 90% of what's going on is usually a pretty good place to start.
This podcast, but
to get back to the theme of this episode, in the summer, I think I would have been pretty steadfast. Yeah, you extend Fred. Like I was calling to extend Fred in the summer. Like this happened on this very podcast. It didn't happen because of cap, machinations or whatever, because the cap's going up and stuff, and Fred wants to wait and hold out, and that's totally fair. The thing I will concede is that I didn't give much room for the idea of Fred not being on the next great Raptors team in the offseason. I will now admit that there's an outcome in which Fred is maybe like the DeMar of this era, where maybe he is moved on before the team kind of moves into contention. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I've accepted that is a potential outcome in a way that I probably wouldn't have in the summer. But, the results so far have been pretty grim. And if they continue, and this is a full season thing, then yeah, you have to start to ask some serious questions I'm also on the side of things where I don't think it's going to continue all season long, and there will be a bounce back of sorts. Is he going to be all-star Fred from last year ever again? I doubt it, but the Raptors don't need him to be that player, and I think he can totally fill the role he's needed to fill on this team and get back to that spot. If he doesn't, then maybe there's a world in which he is not on this team beyond this year, and that would be very sad because Fred VanVleet's a very likable and easy to root for guy, and it would be a little, just icky to sort of continue on without him. But I've opened my mind to the possibility that could happen in a way I didn't maybe 4 months ago. With that, Katie, let's continue on. We're going to talk about Scottie Barnes, Nick Nurse, run through couple quick hitters as well as we continue our look back at the summer before we round this out. But first, got to tell you about our friends over at betonline.net, the number one place for sports betting info, stats, analysis, injury reports, a whole 9 yards. It's there for you. You get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and the World Cup. As we record this, just a few hours from Morocco taking down France. It's going to happen, baby. You can put money on that as well at BetOnline if you would like. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those on BetOnline as well. As they're going to make you the informed wagerer, so you're not just throwing your money indiscriminately at stuff. You're actually betting on things that could earn you some scratch. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, we round out the show here with Katie Heindl, looking back at the summer and our preseason predictions and how they have been, satisfied or not, to this point this year. Let's talk about Scottie Barnes, Katie. Not a banner start for him so far this year. 14 points a game, 7 boards. The assists are up 4.6. That's nice to see, to just 2.4 turnovers. So, some positive silver linings, I would say. But overall, it's felt a little bit weird. It's felt like he hasn't really known his role, and he has seen his efficiency, drop down. The 3-point shooting is up a tad, not, totally in a notable way. It's up a little bit. He's eager to put him up. That's nice to see. But overall, I think there were a lot of people expecting Scottie Barnes to walk in and by the end of the season kind of, cement himself as the second best player on the Raptors behind Pascal. That doesn't seem to be happening right now. I also think, I wrote this, there was a lot of potential for Scottie to come into the year and struggle early on and ease into the season as he was adjusting to the adjustments the league made to him last year. Where are you at, Katie? Had I told you in the summer Scottie was going to, be at 14, 7, and 4.5 and, struggling with his efficiency, not to mention his defense really, really struggling, particularly on the perimeter, no improvement there, probably a regression there, for being honest, what would you have said?
I mean, to not blatantly lie to you, I still probably would have been surprised. I think, even though I tried to temper my expectations for somebody like Scottie Barnes going into his second season, just given the phenomenal, continually expectation shattering first rookie season that he had.
Sure.
I still would have been surprised. Granted, where he's at right now, I would have probably looked at this is a still very small sample size. You've got disruptions in the rotation. I think he is an athlete as his style of play, and also as someone who's in his second season in the NBA, who continuity counts a lot for, and he hasn't really had the continuity of a set roster around him to play off of. I think also when you look at the responsibility, specifically the defensive responsibility he's been asked to take on, and that's what Nurse is going after him about, right? When I look at his numbers, though, they're the dips are surprising, just given what his production was last season. I think his defensive rebounds are up now compared to his offensive rebounds. That to me, it's a small notch, but it is an improvement. And it's something different than he was doing last season. I think in any athlete's career, especially a budding career like this, there's going to be periods where they've got to take all this knowledge that they're getting and learning in real time, because you don't there's not long stretches in a season. You maybe have 2 games off, you do some training, and then you're back out on the floor. So it's there's not a lot of time basically to reconcile all these learnings and then adjust on the fly, especially when you're a young player. So this to me makes sense in terms of where he is. But I would have been surprised if you gave me these numbers in the beautiful heydays of the summer when I was eating Ontario peaches, had a lot of vitamin D exposure and was generally like feeling quite optimistic in general.
Yeah, I think I would be disappointed, I think, if you showed me Scottie's line and sort of showed me the stories and the sort of breakdowns of his shortcomings defensively. I think I would have been a little bit disappointed in the offseason for sure. I still don't think I would have been dissuaded from thinking Scottie Barnes is going to develop into something pretty special. And I still think that today, I don't know, your mileage may vary as to what you think he can evolve into at this point. Has the first 25 or so games actually changed that? I don't think that's really a smart thing to change your outlook on a guy based on 25 games in his second season when he's 21. But I understand, these things, you look at a guy like Ja Morant or Luka Doncic and becoming superstars in year 2. And it's like, oh, why is our guy not doing that? It doesn't happen the same for everybody. And I still think the elements are there. The ability to get to wherever he wants on the floor with his dribble, with his post-up game, with whatever, that's still there. The ability to survey the floor and make incredible reads and throw passes that, other players don't even realize are there, that's still there. You can't even teach that. That's just something that's innate to Scottie Barnes that's going to serve him well. The defense I am a little bit concerned about as to can you turn him into an actually effective, meaningful perimeter defender? Because right now that ain't it, and he's got a lot of growing to do in that department, and so maybe that kind of lowers his ceiling a little bit if you think his physical constitution is not going to allow him to be a good defender. Also, he's 6'9" and really strong, so he probably should be a really good defender at some point. And so yeah, would have been disappointed in the start for sure, but I don't think it would have, turned me off of my pretty bullish take on where Scottie is going to ultimately end up. It just might take longer than we thought, and that's also fine. These guys aren't finished products day one, and they're not finished products in year 7. It's a constant sort of growing thing with these guys. Any last thoughts on Scottie before we quickly hit on Nick Nurse?
Let's not talk about people as finished products.
Yeah, I think that is a pretty good way to live, Katie. Let's go to Nick Nurse real quick to round this out. What were your expectations for him coming into the year? Obviously, this is like the most ethereal of all the things we've talked about, because how the hell do you have expectations for a coach? But I guess had I told you in the summer that Nick Nurse was going to call out a few of his notable players like Gary Trent Jr. I think Scottie Barnes got a call out at some point this year too. And I told you he was going to keep on running the same defense despite it being 21st in points allowed per play, per cleaning the glass over the course of the first third of the season. Had I told you that the offense was going to still kind of be not super innovative and very just kind of dependent on Pascal doing stuff, would you have been disappointed in Nick Nurse's hypothetical performance in the summer?
I mean, the call-out stuff wouldn't have been surprising because that's become...
That's just what he does, baby!
I don't... Which is that's its own thing to talk about, but I don't necessarily agree with all the time.
Sure.
And admittedly, is it the best thing to be known for?
Probably not what you want first on your CV, no?
Yeah. And in terms of just sticking to it, that also doesn't seem a big deviation from the schemes in the past. I know that they've said we believe in this team, we believe in what we're doing. There is a point when you are as you said earlier, the shots are going to fall. Maybe the defense is going to click. You have to sometimes just keep pushing these things in order for them to work, in order to say we didn't back off too soon. Though, and this is tough because Nick Nurse has expressed his frustrations about this as well, just being shorthanded. It's tough to be creative, and he is known as a creative coach, but it is still tough to be creative when you are so shorthanded night after night, and you don't really you have a bench, but it's pretty piecemeal to speak of. The substitutions aren't necessarily meaningful, or they're going to help things in big ways. Maybe sticking to schemes in that sense is just going to be a lot easier on the people you do have available to you, because you're not throwing at them oh, we're going to try this whole new overhaul. It's you know what, we're in a pretty bad period right now with injuries. Let's just stick to what we know. We'll just make one thing less difficult for the team. So in that sense, if that is how they're approaching it, I do understand it. But I think there's a little problem in saying everything that you just said to me. If you said to me in the summer, I wouldn't be surprised by it. Like take from that what you will.
Yeah. To not be surprised by one's stubbornness is, maybe not ideal. Look, I know there's a lot of like fire nurse talk out there. I think that's insanely Yeah.
Oh,
Have you seen the YouTube comments, Katie? Oh my God.
No, I never look at the comments because they're always just like, what a miserable woman. So no, I don't look at comments anymore.
Yeah, stop being asses to Katie in the comments. How about that?
I don't just mean me. It's just like any woman on any podcast. I don't tend to look at the comments.
Yeah, that's a completely fair and a smart business decision, I would say. Either way, don't be an ass in the comments. That's pretty easy. I feel like that's obvious. But back to the point. I think Nurse has maybe not done what you want to see. He's not been quite as innovative as you'd hope. He has been sort of, I think, handcuffed a little bit by the lack of availability of guys. And again, maybe that's of his own doing, right? He plays this very intense style that, over some time here, the guys get hurt on this team. That's just part of the deal. And, it's not totally fair to say it's because Nick Nurse plays this style. Things happen. Pascal Siakam slips on a floor. That's not Nick Nurse's fault. He had nothing to do with that. But, I do think it's something where it's worth not monitoring and worth critiquing. And I still think he has the capacity to evolve and to change things and make the adjustments on the fly. This is a guy who's known for adjustments in game. There's no reason why he can't make them over the course of a season. If he doesn't, and we're still talking about the way they're playing, kind of being rigid in the same way come season's end, then maybe it's a little bit more of a question. But that said, the way they play, when they do it right, when things are working harmoniously, they're a buzzsaw of a basketball team. And so I understand why Nurse would be sort of chasing that dragon, as it were, with the way the team plays, because when the dragon comes out, they go on 14-0 runs and don't allow points for 6 minutes at a time. And it's a pretty impressive thing. It doesn't have to be one meaning, Katie. Things can mean multiple things. It's fine. Okay. We're going to round it there before Katie calls out any more of my analogies. Yes.
This is actually my biggest surprise from the summer. Like, it has nothing to do with anything we've talked about, but like, where is Otto Porter Jr.? Like, I know where he is, but like, if you asked me in the summer, like, that was what I was almost most excited about.
Where is Otto?
Like,
where is Otto?
Him be a part
where is Otto? Where could Otto be? That was a good Bear in the Big Blue House reference to close out the show. We'll round it there. Thanks so much for tuning in. Katie, anything you want to promote?
No, man. Oh,
okay.
I guess keep your eyes peeled on Dime. I'll have something, hopefully, that will cheer up Raptors fans at the end of this week.
We love it. Yay. Also, Basketball Feelings. It's great. Subscribe to it. You're a fool if you don't. You're also a fool if you don't subscribe to Locked On Raptors on YouTube. I'm feeling punchy today. I'm not going to punch anyone, don't worry. But please subscribe on YouTube, support the show. That way, comment, do nice things, be nice in the comments, etc., etc. You can go and subscribe to the podcast in audio form on all the different apps as well. Not on YouTube, that's video, duh. And you can go make your second listen of the day, Locked On Leafs, as our pals Mike and Dave doing a great job covering the Leafs as they continue to be awesome in the Eastern Conference this year. So go check it out, and we'll be back again tomorrow with Jamar Hines to break down Raptors Kings. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.